I knew something was wrong the moment I saw how he looked at her. It wasn't love. It wasn't even lust. It was something colder, sharper, like he wanted her because he could, because he wasn't supposed to. She was my cousin, Leah. We'd grown up together, shared childhood summers, sleepovers, secrets. I was always the quiet one, the bookworm. She was the wild spark, the one everyone watched when she walked into a room. But she was blood, family, and I never thought twice about inviting her to stay with us when she said she needed a fresh start after her breakup. God, what a fool I was. First, everything felt normal, or at least I convinced myself it did. Leah moved into the guest room, helped around the house, cooked sometimes, flirted shamelessly with every man she met, but never with my husband. Not at first. Tyler and I had been married for 7 years. We weren't perfect, but we were steady. I thought that meant something. I thought that counted for something. Then the little things started. She'd walk around in one of my old t-shirts, nothing else, claiming she didn't pack enough pajamas. She'd giggle too loud at his jokes, sit just a little too close on the couch. Once, I caught her in our bathroom using his razor to shave her legs. I laughed it off, told myself I was paranoid, that Leah was just being Leah. But then came the night I found her lipstick on his coffee mug. I remember standing there in the kitchen, staring at it. Bright red. I never wore red. Leah did. My hands were shaking as I picked it up. I turned to Tyler, who was scrolling through his phone, pretending not to notice the tension in the room. "Did you drink from this?" I asked. He didn't even look up, just shrugged. "Probably Leah. She was using my mug earlier." It sounded so casual, so effortless, like it was nothing, like they were already that comfortable. That night I couldn't sleep. I lay awake beside him, staring at the ceiling, my stomach twisting. Every time he turned over, I flinched. The next morning, I started watching. I became the silent observer in my own home, noticing how often they touched, how often they disappeared into the same room by accident, how she wore his hoodie when I wasn't home. I even started taking pictures of their hands brushing, of him handing her a drink with a look he hadn't given me in years. I didn't know what I was collecting evidence for. I wasn't ready to confront him. Not yet. But deep down I already knew. And then came the moment I couldn't ignore. I came home early from work. My meeting got canceled. I didn't text. I wanted to surprise Tyler, maybe grab lunch together. I had this dumb idea that maybe things could still be saved. I walked in through the garage, quiet as I could. I didn't hear them at first, but then I did. The moan. Hers. I froze. My heart slammed in my chest. My skin went cold. I crept toward the hallway. The door to the guest room was half open. I didn't want to look. Every part of me begged not to look. But I did. And there they were. Tyler. My husband. Leah. My cousin, entwined, laughing. She saw me first. Her face went pale. He turned, and everything stopped. Couldn't breathe. I just stood there, watching the two people I trusted most turn into strangers in a heartbeat. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I just said one word. Why? Why? I didn't shout it. It wasn't a scream, or a wail, or anything dramatic. It was quiet, hollow. A single syllable that weighed 1,000 pounds. And it hung there in the air like smoke from a fire I hadn't realized was already burning me to the ground. Leah scrambled to cover herself, grabbing a blanket that was tangled in the sheets, her eyes wide and wild. But Tyler just sat there, frozen, shirtless, his face pale but not ashamed, just caught. Like a teenager who had been busted sneaking out, not a grown man caught cheating on his wife with her cousin. He started, but his voice cracked. He looked at me like he didn't recognize me anymore, like I was the one who didn't belong in that room. I didn't wait for excuses. I turned around and walked out. My hands were trembling. My knees felt weak, but I made it to the kitchen, grabbing the edge of the counter like it could keep me from collapsing. My breath came in short, ragged gasps. I didn't cry. Not yet. There was something too raw, too shattered inside me to let the tears fall. He followed me a minute later, barefoot, still buttoning his jeans, like he couldn't even be bothered to dress properly before trying to fix the unfixable. He opened his mouth to speak, but I raised my hand, silencing him. I didn't want to hear it. Couldn't. Just tell me one thing, I said, still not looking at him. My voice was lower now, steadier. How long? He hesitated. That was all the answer I needed. How long, Tyler? About 2 months, he finally said, his voice barely above a whisper. 2 months. 8 weeks. 60 days. Every one of those days, he'd kissed me, slept beside me, laughed with me while sneaking around with Leah under my nose. In my house. In my bed, maybe. I didn't even ask that. I didn't want to know. I sat down slowly, gripping the edge of the chair to keep from falling apart. My head felt like it was underwater. Everything sounded distant, muffled. And she? I asked. Did she ever feel guilty? Did she even hesitate before stabbing me in the back? She said it wasn't planned, he muttered. It just happened. I let out a bitter laugh. Right? Because people just fall naked into bed together accidentally. His face twisted like he was trying to find a version of the story that would hurt me less. But there wasn't one. Every angle was a knife. Every word was another betrayal. I didn't mean for you to find out like that, he said quietly. That was the moment I snapped. Oh, I see, I said, my voice rising now. So you did mean for me to find out just more conveniently? Maybe after the holidays? After our anniversary? Or were you going to keep fucking my cousin forever and hope I just die of stupidity? Don't say it like that. How else should I say it, Tyler? You slept with my cousin. You broke every promise you ever made to me, and she pretended to love me like a sister while crawling into your bed. He looked away. Coward. I stood up. My body was shaking now, but I didn't care. I wasn't going to break in front of him. I wouldn't give him the satisfaction. I want you out of this house, I said. Today. Now. He didn't argue. He just nodded, grabbed his keys, and walked out. Just like that. No begging. No apologies. Like he'd been waiting for me to say it. As soon as the door closed behind him, the tears came. Hot. Violent. Endless. I sank to the kitchen floor and cried until my throat hurt, until my eyes swelled, until I couldn't feel anything anymore. I had lost my husband. I had lost my cousin. But more than that, I had lost the version of myself who believed that love, loyalty, and blood still meant something. The days after he left were a blur. I moved through them like a ghost, silent, heavy, half alive. My hands would go through the motions, making coffee I wouldn't drink, folding clothes I'd never wear again, opening doors to rooms I couldn't walk into without choking on memories. His smell still lingered on the couch cushions. Her hair, long, black, unmistakably hers, was still caught in my hairbrush. Every inch of my home was a crime scene, and I was the only one left bleeding. Leah was gone, too. She left that same day. Packed a single duffel bag, didn't say a word to me. She didn't apologize. Didn't cry. Just slipped out the front door like a thief, leaving behind nothing but her perfume and her betrayal. For someone who had once called me her soul sister, she sure didn't seem to have a soul at all. At night, sleep became a battleground. I'd lie awake until 3, for in the morning, staring at the ceiling, replaying every moment, every laugh, every whisper, every innocent smile that now felt like a lie. I started to question everything. Was it ever real? Had they been flirting under my nose since the beginning? Did they laugh about me when I wasn't in the room? The paranoia ate at me like acid. And the worst part? No one knew. I didn't tell anyone. Not yet. Because how do you explain that the man you loved, the man you married, chose your own blood over you? How do you say those words out loud without feeling like you're about to collapse under their weight? I told my job I needed time off. I couldn't focus. Couldn't fake small talk or pretend I gave a damn about office drama when my whole world had turned into a burning wreckage. My boss understood, or at least pretended to. Everyone else just assumed I was sick or depressed. And maybe I was. One morning I opened Facebook. It was muscle memory more than anything. I wasn't looking for anything. But there it was. A post from Leah. Just a photo. Her at the beach. Wind in her hair. That same smug, soft smile she always wore when she thought she'd won. And Tyler's hand, his unmistakable hand wrapped around her waist. No caption. Just the image. But it said everything. They weren't sorry. They weren't hiding. They were together. Something inside me snapped. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I laughed. Loud. Sharp. Ugly. The kind of laugh that comes out when your heart's been broken in so many places that your body doesn't even know how to feel anymore. I sat there, alone in my kitchen, laughing until I started shaking. And then I got up. I deleted every photo of him. Every text. Every voicemail. I pulled out the wedding album and dumped it in the trash. I gathered every gift he'd ever given me and shoved them into a box labeled liar. My hands were trembling, but it felt good. Like ripping off a scab. Like taking back space. And then I did something even harder. I called my mother. I told her everything. The silence on the other end was deafening. When she finally spoke, her voice was ice. She always wanted what you had, even when you were kids. That broke something else in me, because it meant I'd never stood a chance. Not with Leah, not with Tyler, and maybe not even with myself. After that call with my mother, something inside me shifted. It wasn't healing, not yet, but it was the beginning of clarity. A kind of bitter understanding that maybe Leah had always seen me as competition, not family. That all the shared smiles, the childhood memories, the late-night heart-to-hearts had been part of a silent rivalry I never even realized I was in. And Tyler? He was just the prize she finally managed to steal. Or maybe he was just dumb enough to think he chose her. Either way, I was the collateral damage left behind. The next few weeks were slow torture. Friends started asking questions. Where's Tyler? Haven't seen him in your stories lately. Are you guys okay? I ignored them at first, too humiliated to answer. But eventually I had to tell the truth. Or at least my version of it. Stripped down. Clean. Tyler cheated on me, I said. With my cousin. Their reactions ranged from gasps to disbelief to a few poorly disguised looks of pity. Some people were shocked. Others admitted they always had a weird vibe from her. A few tried to give me pep talks, telling me I was strong, that I'd find someone better, that at least it happened now and not 10 years later. But none of it helped. None of it made the nights less lonely or the mornings less bitter. None of it erased the image of Leah in that bed with my husband. I started therapy. It wasn't easy. I didn't even know how to begin. I sat in the chair, arms crossed, lips sealed, and just stared at the clock. But the therapist was patient. Her voice was soft but firm. She didn't ask about them. She asked about me. When did I stop feeling seen in the marriage? When did I start doubting myself? Why did I let it slide when Leah crossed boundaries again and again? I didn't have answers at first. But over time, I began to understand something I hadn't before. I wasn't just grieving the betrayal. I was grieving all the versions of myself I'd buried to keep other people comfortable. I'd swallowed so much discomfort, ignored so many red flags, because I didn't want to be dramatic. I didn't want to accuse. I didn't want to be wrong. But I wasn't wrong. They were. And for the first time, that didn't feel like a weakness. Felt like power. Like maybe, just maybe, the destruction they caused could be the foundation for something stronger. Then, one afternoon, I saw them in public. It had been about 6 weeks since the betrayal. I was at the grocery store, sunglasses on, hair in a bun, trying to feel normal. I turned the corner of an aisle, and there they were, Tyler and Leah, holding hands, laughing, as if they hadn't burned down my entire life. She looked radiant, like betrayal suited her. He looked thinner, older. His smile wasn't the same. They didn't see me. I stood there, frozen, for a few seconds. My heart raced. My palms went cold. But then I turned around and walked away. No drama. No confrontation. Just walked. Because what could I say that my silence didn't already scream? Let them have each other. They deserved each other. And I deserved peace. The hardest part wasn't losing Tyler. Or even Leah. It was losing the version of myself who believed people like them couldn't exist in my world. I had built my life on trust, on loyalty, on the unspoken understanding that love meant safety. And suddenly, none of that was true. Suddenly, love was a mask. A costume. Something people wore while they lied straight to your face. I tried dating again. Too soon, maybe. Too desperate to feel something other than betrayal. I went on one date with a man named Adam. He was nice enough. Funny, polite, attentive. But every time he smiled, I found myself dissecting it. Was it genuine? Was it hiding something? When he complimented my laugh, I flinched. When he reached for my hand, I pulled away. I wasn't ready. Not for romance. Not for trust. Not for vulnerability. And he knew it too. At the end of the night, He looked at me and said gently, "You're still healing, and that's okay. But don't punish yourself by pretending you're not." I cried in my car for 20 minutes after that. Not because I wanted Adam, but because I realized how tightly I was still holding on to the pain. Like if I let it go, I'd have nothing left. Like the betrayal had become my identity. But I didn't want that to be true. So I started doing things for me. Small things at first. I repainted the living room. Something Tyler always said was a waste of time. I started journaling again, pouring my thoughts onto paper, giving the hurt a place to live outside of my body. I booked a solo trip to Arizona, rented a little Airbnb in Sedona, and sat on the red rocks every morning watching the sun rise over silence. No one calling my name. No one needing me. Just me, the sky, and the echo of who I used to be. And in that silence, I started to hear myself again. Not the broken woman crying on the kitchen floor. Not the bitter wife abandoned by blood and bond. Just me. Still whole. Still here. When I got back home, I felt different. Stronger. Not healed, but healing. Not angry, but awake. I started saying no to people who drained me. I started setting boundaries with the same voice I once used only to apologize. I stopped explaining myself. And I blocked Leah. It took me months to do it. I kept telling myself I needed to keep the window open, to monitor, to stay informed, to make sure I didn't miss anything. But the truth was I was still looking for closure in her chaos. Still hoping she'd feel regret. That one day she'd post something that looked like guilt. But she never did. And maybe she never would. So I blocked her. And when I did, I didn't feel weak or afraid. I felt free. Because forgiveness doesn't always come wrapped in apologies. Sometimes forgiveness is just a locked door. And peace is the decision to stop checking if it's been knocked on. Months passed. Seasons changed. My hair got longer, my silence got louder, and the pain, well, it stopped screaming. It started whispering instead. Sometimes I'd hear it in the quiet moments, in the clink of a spoon against a coffee mug, in a song that used to play on long drives with him, in the creak of the hallway floor outside the guest room door. It wasn't gone, but it had lost its grip on my throat. People around me began treating me like I was better, as if healing was a finish line and I had crossed it. But I knew the truth. Healing wasn't linear. It was circular. It came in waves. Some days I felt like I could breathe fire, like nothing could touch me. Other days I'd pass a mirror and see a version of myself that still looked betrayed, still looked haunted. But even on those days I didn't wish for them back. Not even for a second. I started writing again. Real writing. Not just in my journal, but in a blog I created anonymously. I called it After the Fire. I wrote about heartbreak, about betrayal, about the hollow spaces people leave behind when they walk out without explanation. I didn't name them, didn't need to. The pain was universal. And slowly, strangers began to read. They left comments. They shared their own stories. Women who had been cheated on by sisters, best friends, co-workers. Men whose wives had fallen in love with their brothers. Pain that echoed mine in ways that made me feel less alone. And then, one day, a message arrived. It was from Leah. I stared at the screen for a long time before opening it. Her profile picture was still the same. The two of them, her and Tyler, smiling like sin didn't stain them. But the message was short. Simple. "I'm sorry." 2 words. 2 tiny words that should have meant everything but instead felt like an insult. Not because I didn't want an apology, but because I knew she didn't mean it. Not really. If she had, she would have called. She would have written something real. Not a digital shrug sent through a screen at 2:17 a.m. I didn't respond. Instead, I closed my laptop and sat there in the dark, wondering what kind of woman she saw in the mirror now. Did she believe she'd won? That taking Tyler had earned her some kind of twisted victory? Or did she look in her own eyes and flinch the way I used to? I guess I'll never know. And maybe that's for the best. Because healing, I realized, isn't about getting closure from the ones who hurt you. It's about finding peace in the silence they leave behind. So I poured myself a glass of wine, lit a candle, and whispered a thank you not to them but to myself. For surviving. For staying. For choosing to begin again even with scars still fresh and heart still sore. Because this was my story now. And I was finally the one writing it. There's a strange kind of quiet that follows devastation. Not the kind filled with numbness or grief, but the kind that feels like space. Like breath. Like walking through the ashes of something that nearly destroyed you and realizing you're still standing. I didn't recognize it at first. I kept waiting for the collapse. For the next betrayal. For the next reminder that nothing is promised, that even family can turn into strangers with the flick of a desire. But it didn't come. What came instead was stillness. And in that stillness, I started building a new kind of life. I moved out of the house. It was harder than I expected. Every room had ghosts. Memories embedded in the walls, like laughter fossilized into paint and hardwood. I found a new apartment across town. Small but warm. With light that spilled into the kitchen every morning and windows that overlooked a quiet street where nothing ever seemed to happen. It was perfect. It was mine. On my first night there, I sat on the floor with a single lamp, a pizza box, and a cheap bottle of wine. There were no pictures on the walls, no furniture yet, just the echo of my own breath. And still I smiled, because even in the emptiness, there was peace. No more pretending. No more shared space with memories that made my stomach turn. No more shadows of people who didn't deserve to live in my mind rent-free. I didn't date. Not for a long time. I focused on myself, on routines, on therapy, on writing. I started running in the mornings. I picked up pottery classes on Sundays. I even joined a book club with women who had been through their own versions of hell. We laughed. We cried. We drank cheap wine and spilled stories we hadn't told anyone else. Felt sacred. Like being seen for the first time in a long while. One evening, about a year after the breakup, I saw Tyler again. Not in person, on social media. A friend had shared a post from someone I didn't know. And there he was in the background. Older. Tired. Something hollow in his eyes. I couldn't tell if they were still together. Leah wasn't in the picture. Maybe she was behind the camera. Maybe she was long gone. I didn't care. But I stared at his face for a long moment. And what shocked me most wasn't anger. Or sadness. Or longing. It was indifference. He didn't matter anymore. Not the way he once did. He was a chapter. A long, painful chapter, but not the story. Not even close. And Leah? She was a footnote. A cruel twist in a plot that ultimately led me back to myself. So I closed the app. I poured another glass of wine. I opened my manuscript and kept writing. Because this life, this quiet, beautiful, earned life, it was finally mine. And no one, no cousin, no husband, no liar, could ever take it from me again. Sometimes people ask me if I ever confronted Leah. If I ever screamed in her face, demanded to know how she could betray someone who treated her like a sister, who loved her without condition. The truth is, no. I never did. Not because I didn't want to. There were nights I lay in bed crafting the perfect monologue in my mind. Every insult sharpened. Every truth loaded like ammunition. But I never gave her that satisfaction. Because the moment I realized she wasn't sorry was the same moment I realized she didn't deserve my pain. She already had what she came for. She took what she wanted and left me with the ruins. But what she didn't expect was that I'd rebuild. That I'd take those broken pieces and turn them into something stronger. Something sacred. Something she could never touch. And the funny thing about betrayal? It has a way of revealing people completely. Stripping away their charm, their excuses, their masks. I saw Leah for what she was, not just in that bed with my husband, but in every moment before that. Every sly comment disguised as concern. Every competitive glance I brushed off as coincidence. Every fake hug. It was all there. I just hadn't been willing to see it. But now I see everything clearly. She didn't steal Tyler from me. He gave himself to her. And if he was so easy to take, he was never mine to begin with. That truth used to cut deep. Now it's a strange kind of freedom. I don't believe in revenge, not the dramatic movie kind. But I do believe in evolution. In becoming so much more than what they tried to reduce you to. And that, in itself, is the sweetest justice. Not watching them fail. Not waiting for karma. Just living. Fully. Loudly. Authentically. Without them. One evening, I received an email from a woman I didn't know. Her name was Claire. She had found my blog and said it had helped her leave a man who had been gaslighting her for years. She wrote, "Your words gave me the permission I didn't know I needed." I read that line over and over. I cried, because it meant that my pain hadn't just sat useless inside me. It had moved, reached someone else, helped them save themselves. That was the first time I truly understood the purpose behind all of it. The suffering, the betrayal, the collapse. It wasn't to break me. It was to forge me into something I never would have become otherwise. Someone stronger, wiser, unapologetically honest. And from that place, I stopped waiting for the pain to end. Instead, I began creating a life around it. A life where I didn't just survive what happened. I owned it. And that made all the difference. There came a day when I didn't think about them at all. Not even once. It hit me hours later, while I was driving home from work, music playing low, the golden hour painting the sky in soft shades of orange and pink. I realized that for an entire day, my mind had been free of their shadows. No lingering bitterness. No mental rewinds. No silent monologues of what I should have said or done. Just peace. Just presence. Just me. That realization didn't make me cry. It made me smile. Because for the longest time I thought moving on would be loud, some dramatic act of liberation. But it wasn't. It was quiet. Subtle. A soft exhale after holding my breath for too long. I started embracing that quiet. I began waking up early just to sit by the window with my coffee and watch the street come alive. I spent weekends at the farmer's market chatting with strangers, trying new recipes, learning how to love solitude without calling it loneliness. I filled my space with things that made me feel good, plants I never thought I could keep alive, thrifted art, shelves filled with books I actually had time to read. And for the first time in years I started trusting myself again. Not blindly, not foolishly, but deeply, intentionally. I stopped second-guessing every instinct. I stopped apologizing for setting boundaries. I stopped giving people pieces of myself they hadn't earned. And in doing so, I found something sacred: self-respect. Not the kind you perform for others, but the kind you hold like armor around your soul. Then came something I didn't expect. A man. Not like Tyler. Not flashy. Not smooth. He was quiet. Kind. A little awkward. He didn't try to impress me, he just showed up consistently, respectfully, patiently. We met at the library, of all places. He noticed the book in my hand, and instead of using it as a line, he asked if I liked the author. I said yes. We talked for an hour. And then we did it again a week later. It was slow. Deliberate. He didn't ask too many questions about my past, but when I offered pieces of it, he listened without flinching. One night, I told him everything. About the betrayal. About Leah. About the shame and the healing and the rage. He didn't interrupt. When I finished, he just said, "You didn't deserve that. But I'm glad you're still here." There was no pity in his voice. Just presence. And for the first time since everything fell apart, I felt truly seen. Not for the scars, but for the strength it took to survive them. It's been 2 years now. 2 years since the lie shattered everything I thought I knew. Since I stood in that hallway watching my husband and my cousin destroy the last illusion I had about loyalty, love, and blood. 2 years since I begged for answers that never came, cried in a kitchen that no longer exists in my world, and stared into a mirror trying to recognize the woman left behind. And I can finally say this without shaking: I survived. More than that, I became. I became someone I never thought I'd need to be. Someone stronger. Not harder, not colder, but wiser. Sharper. Someone who doesn't mistake familiarity for safety. Who understands now that sometimes the people who smile the closest are the ones who can cut the deepest. Leah never reached out again. That late night "I'm sorry" was the only offering she ever made. Tyler tried, once. He sent a long email, pages of regret, explanations, reflections about how he was lost and confused. He said he missed me. That he didn't realize what he had until it was gone. I didn't respond. Because closure doesn't come from the people who broke you. It comes from the person you become when you refuse to let their betrayal define you. I don't need revenge. I don't even need an apology. What I needed was distance. Time. A rebuilding of my soul from the inside out. And that's exactly what I gave myself. Now, when I think about Leah and Tyler, it's not with pain or anger. It's with clarity. With detachment. They are a chapter, a brutal, unforgettable chapter, but still just that. Not the whole book. Not even close. And the man I'm with now? He doesn't complete me. I do that myself. But he honors the woman I've become. He respects the space I carved out of fire and grief. He loves me not in spite of my past, but with full awareness of it. Gently. Steadily. Without illusion. There's a quiet joy in this life I've built. A joy I didn't think I'd feel again. It's not flashy or loud. It's slow mornings. Safe hands. Laughter that doesn't carry an edge. It's being able to say, "I love you," and actually believe it won't come back as a lie. So if you're reading this and you're still in the thick of it, if the betrayal is still fresh, if the pain still wakes you up at 3 a.m., if you feel like you'll never be whole again, I promise you this. You will rise. Not because they deserve to see you thrive, but because you deserve to live free of their shadow. This story began with betrayal, but it ends with something far more powerful. Freedom.